You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 99, The Side Effects of Comfort. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, my friend, and happy Wednesday, if it's Wednesday when you're listening to this. How are you? I hope everything is great in your world. How are your little gut buddies? I hope you have a good strategy for keeping your friendly gut bacteria healthy and some good products to occasionally help you maintain that balance. It's so important for all areas of your health. It's almost unbelievable how much your microbe population controls your mood, what genes are turned on and off, your cravings, your skin appearance, your immune system. It's crazy. Now, I hope that you're comfy because today we're talking about comfort. Comfort affects your health span because resilience and strength have everything to do with having more life in your years, both now and in the future. The inspiration for this episode came mostly from the great book, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. It's awesome and wonderfully written. I highly recommend it. It has some language in it as he's quoting a guy that he went caribou hunting with in Alaska, but a really interesting book and perspective. So, imagine what life was like for your ancestors several hundred years ago. Maybe they were in Central America or Africa or Asia. Mine were in Sweden. What do you think daily life was like for them? Pretty uncomfortable by our standards, right? But not to them, it was just normal. They would be pretty constantly exposed to the elements. Too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, too windy, too snowy. And it just dealt. They were probably hungry a lot of the time too. They most likely walked for many miles every day. There were probably long stretches of boredom. They had to figure out a lot of stuff for themselves if they wanted to stay alive. There was daily stress. Going further back in ancestral time, as Michael Easter puts it in his book, if they didn't find food, they died. If a lion decided he wanted their food, they died. If they got too far away from water, they died. If violent weather hit, they died. If they got an infection, they died. If they tripped and fractured a leg, they died. And so on. End quote. It was stressful and uncomfortable to be alive way back in the day, whatever day that was. I love living history type places, castles, walled cities, monasteries, cliff dwellings, pioneer villages. It's all super fascinating to me. Those are some of my favorite places to go because it's good food for my imagination. I remember in Mont Saint-Michel, they had one of those audio guide things, and it was so well done that they had the background sounds and everything, and it really helped me get into what it might have been like to live there in the 1500s or whatever. So interesting. And it also makes me appreciate, indoor plumbing, memory foam, the garbage man, online shopping, air conditioning. We have so many comforts and conveniences. It's awesome. We should most certainly keep and appreciate all of them, but we also need to know that they're changing our resilience and adaptability, which are core fundamental components of being healthy and aging well. Being exposed to extreme temperatures, being frequently hungry, having long stretches of boredom, relying on hard physical labor to be able to stay alive, walking for miles and having to outsmart predators and physical dangers was really hard. Because they dealt with all of that discomfort, there were many things they didn't have to deal with. Michael Easter says, namely, the most pressing problems that modern cultures are facing right now, problems that are making many of our lives unhealthier, unhappier, and less than they could be. The data shows that the majority of us are living a greater proportion of our years in ill health, propped up by medications and machines. Lifespan is up, but health span is down. 70% of us are too heavy. 30% of us have diabetes or prediabetes. 40 million Americans have mobility problems. Heart disease kills a fourth of us. We also have life-threatening diseases of despair like depression, anxiety, addiction, and suicide. So yes, we don't have to deal with discomforts like working for our food, moving hard and heavy each day, feeling deep hunger, and being exposed to the elements. But we do have to deal with the side effects of our comfort. Long-term physical and mental health problems, lack of physical struggles like having to work hard for our livelihoods. We have too many ways to numb out, like comfort food, cigarettes, alcohol, pills, smartphones, and TV. We're detached from the things that make us feel happy and alive, like connection, being in the natural world, effort, and perseverance. End quote. So good. He talks about how the average American now spends 93% of our time indoors in climate-controlled environments, and he has some funny examples of our comparative discomforts. Mindless hunger from watching too much Food Network, hard work being sitting and staring at a spreadsheet for 4 hours, and our biggest stress coming from wondering whether our coworker makes more money than we do. This isn't to say that life isn't hard now. It is, but it's a different kind of hard, and some, perhaps a significant number of our current difficulties come from having too many readily available comforts. So I wanted to talk about a few of those today. I'm sure there will be more that you can think of, and it could be interesting to pick out what some other ones might be. Think about it as you go about your day today and see what else you come up with. First of all, we're not bad for wanting to have all of these comforts. It's instinctual to seek safety, shelter, warmth, extra food, and minimal effort. That instinct to seek comfort is what allowed our ancestors to survive by finding food, seeking shelter, running from predators, and avoiding overly risky decisions. The problem is that our ancestors' discomforts were mostly physical and short-lived, and ours are mostly emotional and very chronic. Our environment has changed, but our wiring hasn't, and perhaps it's the absence of discomfort that is perpetuating our health and longevity problems today. This is my favorite quote from the book, The Comfort Crisis. Comforts and conveniences are great, but they haven't always moved the ball downfield in our most important metric, happy, healthful years. Perhaps existing only in our increasingly overcomfortable, overbuilt environment and always obeying our comfort drives has unintended consequences and caused us to miss profound human experiences. There are conditions that humans evolved to live in and experiences we were meant to have that are no longer germane to our lives. This has undoubtedly changed us, often not for the best. End quote. Okay, in an effort to improve our number of happy, healthful years and not miss out on profound human experiences we were meant to have, let's go through a few discomforts that might actually be good for us. We'll start with boredom. I'm certainly old enough to remember being bored. Life before having a supercomputer in my pocket at all times. Actually, just waiting while I was waiting in line. Looking out the window in long drives in the car. It's something that is almost completely gone from our lives, and certainly the lives of our kids. We're going to talk more about this, well, kind of, not quite, in a couple of weeks. It's so important to your mind and spirit to have some time away from all inputs, including social media, news podcasts, books, and even music. But not even worrying about actual solitude right now, we rarely just let our minds wander anymore. I know I'm guilty of this. I rarely ever just do the dishes or fold the laundry or go for a walk. I almost always do it with a book, a class, or a podcast going. It's so awesome that we have that option. I love it so much, but we don't want all of our boredom to be stolen away. There's a scientist named James Dankert who says that our lack of boredom is not only burning us out and leading us to poor mental health, but also muting what boredom is trying to tell us about our mind, emotions, ideas, wants, and needs. That's interesting, right? Boredom is a motivational state that allows us to see what it is that we really want and need and helps us be creative about getting there. It also helps us process complicated information, which adds to our productivity, sanity, and sense of meaning. I've been deliberately adding back just 10 to 15 minutes a day or so of solitude time when I'm doing a menial task where I just let my mind wander. I've been doing this for the past month and a half or so, and I'm really liking it. It does feel just a little bit uncomfortable at first, like I'm wasting time, but I can feel that it's helpful. Michael Easter makes a good argument that the way we used to deal with the discomfort of boredom was profoundly good for our brain health, and the way we deal with it now, with distraction via digital media, is like junk food for your brain, and it's detracting from who you want to be. Powerful stuff. Hey there, just a quick interruption to say I think the jury's still kind of out on how bad and in what way it's really bad to put aluminum on your skin, but it doesn't seem great, and I figured why not avoid it? Well, because all of the aluminum-free deodorants I ever tried didn't work. Until I tried Lume. This is the first aluminum-free deodorant I ever tried that actually worked. I was instantly converted. Then, over time, I discovered that the answer to my whole family's itchy skin after every shower problem is Lume's acidified body wash. It's awesome, and their acidified body butter keeps our skin soft and hydrated. They even have a laundry product that makes your clothes smell great. I can't say enough good about Lume. Plus, their commercials are hilarious. You should watch one on YouTube if you haven't seen one yet. If you want to give Lume a try, there's a link in the show notes that will give you $5 off your order. My favorite is the Pink Peony Body Wash. It smells like washing yourself with bubble gum, which I wouldn't recommend, but I do recommend Lume. Okay, back to the show. Next up, going outside. It's kind of inconvenient. It might be too bright or too windy. There's dirt on the ground, and that's a problem. There's a quote from John Muir that says, "Nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home, that wilderness is a necessity, and that mountain parks and reservations are useful not only as fountains of timber and irrigating rivers, but as fountains of life." End quote. He said that about nerve-shaken, over-civilized people in 1901. He was right. You've probably heard of Shinrin-yoku before. If not, look it up for sure. It's super interesting. It's the Japanese art of forest bathing. I've talked about it before. It sounds kind of naughty, forest bathing. The Japanese have done all kinds of studies on Shinrin-yoku since the 1980s, and it's definitely proven that just 15 minutes of sitting in and walking through nature improves all of your health metrics. All of them. The more, the better. University of Michigan scientists have found in their studies the ideal dose of going outside. The base is that you need 20 minutes 3 times a week of nature. This can be urban nature like a city park or backyard. Then on top of that, you need 5 hours per month in more wild nature. The wilder the better. This would be like hiking or being in a forest. Then you also need 3 days per year of backcountry nature. This would be like camping somewhere after the dirt road ends. There's a researcher named Ken Sanders from Salt Lake, where I'm from, who has shown this 3-day effect, as he calls it, to have profound effects, making you more creative, less anxious, increasing your alpha and theta brain waves. Those are the same brain waves increased by experienced meditators. Dealing with the inconveniences of being away from people with no bathrooms, no TVs, couches, air conditioners, or refrigerators for 20 minutes 3 times a week, 5 hours per month, and 3 days per year improves all of your health metrics, resets your thinking, and revives your brain. A related inconvenience that is exceptionally good for our bodies is that of temperature extremes. We talked a little about this in episode 35, Stress Yourself on Purpose. I find this so fascinating as a way to hack your biology. Heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins, which are the same thing, can be so good for you if you get them in the right doses. There is a researcher named Susanne Soberg in Denmark who has researched this pretty extensively and has sussed out the proper doses for both cold and heat exposure. Check her out if you're curious. I've had her book Winter Swimming in my Amazon cart for like 3 or 4 months now because they don't have it at the library and I just haven't gotten around to buying it yet. It doesn't come on Audible. She has an online course, which sounds really compelling, so I'll get around to that someday. But the right amount of heat exposure, like in a sauna, is really good for your cardiovascular system, immune system, and your mitochondria, which produce your energy. I have a sauna in my house and I use it 3 or 4 times a week, and I think it's fabulous. Let me know if you want to hear more about sauna stuff. I like to talk about it. Cold exposure is also really beneficial in the right doses. I turn my shower to cold for the last 30 seconds of every shower, but other than that, I'm not as experienced as a lot of people at cold plunges. I've done cryotherapy a few times and I love it. My 13-year-old came with me the last time and he was pretty cute in the cryo chamber. Benefits of correct cold exposure are similar to that of saunas, helping you be stronger, have more energy, recover more quickly, increasing your overall longevity and resilience. Brown fat is also a real thing that is really beneficial to your body. Almost nobody has effective brown fat anymore because they're not cold acclimatized, but they could be with a little bit of effort. Being outside in cold temperatures increases calorie burn. Non-shivering thermogenesis can increase your metabolism by 5 to 30%. I was thinking about this morning when I was at the gym. I used to go to a gym in my neighbor's garage, which I loved 1,000 times more. But because it was in the garage, it was really cold in the winter and really hot in the summer. And I think that made me more resilient. It wasn't always fun, but I do believe that it was actually good for me. Now the gym I go to is always the same temperature inside, whatever time of year it is, which is more comfortable, but not better for me in my opinion. Also related to the inconveniences of the outdoors, high altitude is an inconvenience that makes you stronger and more resilient. We won't talk about it at length here because we went over it a ton in episodes 11 and 13 about breathing. But hemoglobin is the part of our blood that carries oxygen from the lungs into all the cells of our body, and the way to get hemoglobin to release its oxygen into our tissues is to have proper levels of carbon dioxide. Being at a high altitude recalibrates your carbon dioxide levels, getting you used to having higher CO2 levels, which somewhat paradoxically instructs your hemoglobin to release more oxygen into your tissues. This is why some athletes train at high altitude, because it makes you stronger. Another convenience somewhat related to being always indoors is that of over-sanitation. Sanitation doesn't seem like a bad thing, and overall it's not. We definitely do not want to go back to the days of cholera, typhoid, and dysentery. Indoor plumbing is completely awesome. Sterile instruments and products are important, but there is a link between the rise of food allergies, chronic inflammation, and autoimmune diseases and the rise of super sanitized lives. Even mood, metabolism, and general immunity can be harmed by over-sanitation. Constant low-level exposure to a wide variety of microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, and fungi, teaches our body how to respond, when to kick back and relax, and when to wage war. When we greatly reduce our exposure to any microorganisms, our immune systems become less smart and less effective. We both have a harder time fighting formerly fairly benign microbes, making us more disease-prone, and also promote the overvigilance of our immune system, leading to autoimmune diseases and allergies. Like all of these stressors, there's a proper dose. It's not licking the used tongue depressors in the hospital, but going outside and touching soil, getting a little bit dirty, growing food in soil that's actually alive, spending actual time with living, breathing, healthy humans, those things make you more resilient. Another discomfort Michael Easter talks about in his book, which I found super interesting because it's not really a biohack like some of the others, is death. Death makes us uncomfortable. Imagine that. 8 out of 10 Westerners say that they are very uncomfortable with death, and only half of people over age 65 have considered how they want to die. In the book, Michael Easter says that according to death historian, how would you like that to be your job? Hello, what do you do? Oh, I'm a death historian. Anyway, death historian Dr. Gary Lederman says that in the 1800s and before, death was just a part of everyday life. He says that the key turning point was Abraham Lincoln's funeral. He was the most public figure to have a new procedure called embalming. The process was described in the newspapers. After Honest Abe, embalming became all the rage and the funeral industry grew. It was a way to keep death distant. This also coincided with the rise of modern hospitals. Instead of dying at home and having your body reside there until you could be buried by your loved ones, your dead body could now be handled by hospital and mortuary staff. The book talks a lot about Bhutan and how it's the happiest place on earth because they have a national curriculum to think about death 3 times a day. They are very death-focused and thus very happy. They wisely say that when you understand how impermanent life is, you cannot help but follow a happier path. Thinking about your own death calms your mind, reduces anger and criticism, and enhances gratitude. What do you think? Do you feel like thinking about death more would make your life happier? This is a big part of Stoic philosophy also. Memento mori, remember death. Scientists at the University of Kentucky tested whether there was any wisdom in this. They had one group of people think about a painful visit to the dentist, and the other contemplate their own death. The death thinkers afterward encountered a newfound perspective. They reported being more happy and fulfilled in life. The scientists concluded that death is a psychologically threatening fact, but when they contemplate it, apparently the automatic system begins to search for happy thoughts. Existential philosopher Martin Heideggers said, quote, "If I take death into my life, acknowledge it, and face it squarely, I will free myself from the anxiety of death and the pettiness of life, and only then will I be free to become myself." End quote. Michael Easter says, "Many of us are so unaware of our impending death that we forget to live true to ourselves, which is the most common regret of Americans on their deathbeds." End quote. It's an interesting one, but if you embrace the discomfort of pondering your own death, you'll be more aware of the impermanence of life, which makes you happier and more grateful. Embracing life's only guarantee is what helps you become free to be yourself and actually live your life while you have the chance. Another discomfort that I'm sure you could guess would come up as making your life way better is that of physical labor. Work, exercise, movement, whatever you want to call it. Using your body to do difficult things makes it stronger and gives you a much better quality of life. I have a ton to say about this, and we're going to talk about some super fascinating related stuff in a few weeks, but I'm sure you know about no pain, no gain, or whatever. Doing ergonomically correct, uncomfortably difficult physical labor makes your life way better. It also makes me think of Katie Bowman's work and talking about how the widespread adoption of chairs and raised beds has made us weaker. So even if it's less comfortable, embrace the opportunity to get down on the floor and to hang from things. Being capable and resilient is super important. Embracing the discomfort now will make your life 1,000,000 times more comfortable 4 decades from now, when you're the only one who can still lift, twist, balance, and move through all ranges of motion without pain. It's a really big deal. Have you been thinking of some other comforts that could possibly be making your life worse? The last discomfort that we're going to talk about today, though I'm sure there are many more, is one I'm sure you could also guess. Hunger. I would surmise that one of our ancestors' greatest daily stresses was whether or not they were going to get to eat anytime soon. Effortless access to an endless supply of calorie-dense food would have been their dream come true. It's the ultimate comfort. Unfortunately, it's a comfort that is killing us. As Michael Easter puts it, eating without precision makes you sick, fat, poor, slow, and ignorant. End quote. Kind of harsh, but kind of true. I like the idea of eating with precision. He also points out that 13 tortilla chips are 100 calories, and eating an extra 100 calories a day for 3 years results in a 10-pound weight gain, all from 13 tortilla chips. It's the unawareness or ignorance of what our food is doing to us, plus access to infinite qualities of cheap, ultra-processed food that is causing so many health problems today. The antidote is becoming fully aware of what we're eating, how much we're eating, and why we're eating. There is a ton to unpack with each of those three factors. Industrial seed oils, crazy amounts of added sugar. He has some unbelievable statistics in the book about how radically people underestimate how many calories they eat. 717? What? That's like a fast food meal's worth of calories that people don't know they ate. That's insane. Then, of course, most of us are never actually hungry. We might have reward cues that we mistake for hunger and other discomforts, but true hunger is pretty rare these days. Often we eat as a coping mechanism to try to solve for other forms of discomfort. But true hunger is really good for you. Our bodies are built to leverage lean times for good. I've talked about autophagy before. I think it's amazing. You probably remember that it's cellular housekeeping that keeps you running cleanly and efficiently and extends your health span and lifespan. It's like a cellular taking out of the trash. Well, really, it's like decluttering of suboptimal machinery and recycling it to make brand new parts. Autophagy means self-eating. Extended fasts rev up and renew our body, making them more resilient. If we don't have 12 to 16 hours between meals with the occasional longer fast, our bodies never get a chance to turn on autophagy, and the gunk and underperforming cellular equipment hangs around and starts to build up. There are all sorts of other benefits to fasting or being hungry. Turning off mTOR, which helps you live longer and reduces your chances of getting cancer, increasing focus and attention, keeping your body fat percentage in a healthy range, reducing inflammation, improving insulin sensitivity, and thus metabolic flexibility and health, reducing risk of cardiovascular disease, reducing risk of dementia, and as Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Jews, and Christians know, increasing spirituality and religious experience. Occasionally, embracing the discomfort of hunger is extremely good for our bodies. Of course, it's okay to be comfortable sometimes, even most of the time. Wear good shoes and soft clothes, have an awesome bed and highly nutritious food. But I would also invite you to consider the benefits of purposefully getting uncomfortable sometimes. It will make you physically stronger and more resilient. And even more importantly, in my opinion, it will teach you that you are capable of doing hard things, that you're not someone who's scared off by the threat of a little discomfort. You are bigger than that. If you want to learn more about this, I would recommend the book, The Comfort Crisis. I'll put a link in the show notes. You can learn about rewilding yourself, what rucking is, problem creep, extreme quiet as a mental health treatment, and why Icelanders are harder to kill than the rest of us. Oh, and what a misogi is. I kind of want to do one, but I'm kind of scared because it sounds supremely uncomfortable. I had a friend tell me the other day that I'm so good at getting out of my comfort zone. It was like the nicest compliment ever, but it doesn't feel very true most of the time, especially for emotional comfort zones. So I'd rather jump in a bathtub full of ice than have to call someone on the phone. He said that because I was telling him about my improv class, which was for sure out of my comfort zone. I also learned a lot, had a ton of fun, and I'm super glad I did it. The discomfort really did make me better, and I'm not just saying that. So will embracing measured doses of the discomforts of boredom, going outside, temperature extremes, high altitude, not overly sanitizing things, contemplating death, physical labor, and hunger. Which discomfort do you think you could embrace to become just a little stronger and more resilient? That's like you. I wanted to end by repeating Michael Easter's quote that I shared at the beginning of the episode. Comforts and conveniences are great, but they haven't always moved the ball downfield in our most important metric. Happy, healthful years. Perhaps existing only in our increasingly overly comfortable, overbuilt environment and always obeying our comfort drives has had unintended consequences and caused us to miss profound human experiences. There are conditions that humans evolved to live in and experiences we were meant to have that are no longer germane to our lives. This has undoubtedly changed us, often not for the best." End quote. Next week, we're going to talk about how to be more driven. Until then, don't miss out on the profound human experiences you are meant to have, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.